Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, Xcn survived. It has survived. Now, if you guys do not know what I'm talking about, we did have a sell off week last week, and I was practically saying how important it is for us to really close the weekly candle practically above this price of 0.01397. Okay. And the reason why I said this, ladies and gentlemen, is because this is practically where our weekly candle close was, right? For one of the floors, right? It was down here. And the reason why it was important is because Xcn has been trending to the upside. We can see when we go to a different point, right? We have a low over here. We have another low at roughly 0.012. And then we have one that closes pretty much at 0.014, right? And we can see, right? It has been going up higher. The floor has been going up higher and higher. But the only problem is that the roof has also been getting lower and lower, right? We can see there's a point at zero point 0.2 or 0.02, right? We have a roof over here. And then we have another roof, ladies and gentlemen, at 0.018. So we can see that the floor is getting higher and the roof is getting smaller, which ultimately means we are getting squished. Now, the reason why I didn't really want for us to close below 0.014 is because, ladies and gentlemen, that would mean for the first time in many weeks, we would actually have a weekly candle close lower than one of the points, which would not be ideal. But since we didn't, as of right now, the floor has continued to go higher, right? Because when we take away all the wicks, all the distractions, we could see, right, the weekly close, this one over here, closed at 0.0144 instead of 0.014 or lower. So the floor is continuously going up higher and higher. So that also means another thing, right? We survived, we live another day, but we do have to make a choice sooner than later. Because even technically this week we could pump, but if we pump and we close, let's say at 0.0178, let's say somewhere over here, right? Then, ladies and gentlemen, we are still in the same pickle where we are just raising our floors but lowering our roof, which means Xcn still didn't decide which way it wants to go. Now, I personally think it's going to go to the upside just because of the market conditions and just because something like Bitcoin finally filled up its gap, right? When we go and look, right, if I bring back some of these wicks over here and go to a different time frame, like the 4 hour, we could see, ladies and gentlemen, that we did fill up the 114K gap, right? There's a big gap between $114,300 and practically $115,600. So it was not ideal. We knew that Bitcoin was going to retrace, meaning altcoins were going to take a little bit of a hit. But now that that's happened, I'm looking for more confirmation reversals so Bitcoin can start going up higher and higher. Because I personally do believe ultimately, right, even if we were to pull back a little bit for something like Bitcoin, right, I ultimately do believe and I'm looking for us to start reversing, to start going higher and higher, because I don't think Bitcoin topped is here. Right? I don't think Bitcoin topped out yet. I think Bitcoin has a lot more to go, and I expect it to go up. And obviously, with Bitcoin going up, usually altcoins go up a little bit as well. One thing I do want to say, though, ladies and gentlemen, right, is from a trend line perspective, if we go and look at something like the daily, right, we could see that boom goes something like this, right? We can see that we are still holding well, right? We are still holding well. And remember, it doesn't have to be literally perfect, but you see we're touching one point, we're practically touching another point here, and then now at the bottoms, right? We can see a little bit of rejection. So, everything is still looking fairly solid with Xcn, right? There hasn't been any huge confirmation or momentum swing to the upside just yet, saying, we're breaking structure and we're confirmed going to be going higher and higher. But as of right now, as of today, everything is looking fairly solid. Now, also another thing I wanted to draw out was from the bottoms, right? We could see if we take it from even back here, back when Xcn was at 0.0035, we could take this trend line and we can more or less do something like this, right? We can do more or less something like this. Now, this isn't perfect, and you might debate, doing it in a different style. You could just say, well, let's just do this, let's just do this. And, there are some people that debate saying, hey, look, Xcn is below this trend line, right? Because we have 1 point, we have another point, we have another point, and we are below the line. We are below it. But, like I said, sometimes the trend line is more of a perspective thing. It really just depends where you put it. But, it is something we are looking out for because, if price action is going to be too weak, then of course there's always that chance of us just simply going lower and pulling back down. But like I said, since the weekly confirmation candle was very, very good, I do expect for some type of pullback to happen, right? At least at this week at the bare minimum, especially the way we did close. But I do really just want to start seeing Xcn explode because there's so many liquidity points to be taken, right? We have all these highs of 0.02, right? We have this double top, then we have this weekly candle at 0.0022, 0.0024, and then 0.027, and even probably this would get taken out at 0.0277, right? So once we really do start seeing that expansion, like we should see Xcn rise from this point at least, upwards of even 100%, right? Even 100%, which is why I think Xcn is really just looking to play out, the sideways game as long as possible, because the longer something goes sideways, the bigger the bang will have, right? So if it just continues to go like this before it just has to make a choice, then I do believe we will be going to the upside. We will be taking out multiple points of liquidity, and we will be practically dominating the markets. Now, if we go and look at something like coin market cap and we go to something like Xcn, right, we could see that in the last 24 hours, we had 15 million volume. So not much, not much, which also sometimes, low volume can indicate reversal signs because there's not a lot of volume to push price lower or higher depending on the context. We can see we're at 500 million market cap. So like I said, I do believe from here we should be looking at a minimum 20x, right? 20x. If we go and look while this loads, we can see we are ranked 116 in the world. I expect for us to absolutely get into the top 100 easily, top 80 easily. Getting into that top 50 will be harder, but it's not impossible. We can see that we have been growing very, very nice. We've practically been growing consistently. It's hard to say, but 50 to 100 people per day. And especially that XCN has been selling off and it's been going sideways. That's really, really good. That's called organic growth. That's people coming to a project because they know, they believe, they see the vision, they see the value for what it is, and it's not just bandwagon hype. But yeah, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.